Welcome back to the 8th part of the Flutter YouTube Search tutorial course. In the previous part we've added the model classes for single video detail data, which includes a longer description and also video tags. In this part we're going to add code to the data source and also to the repository so that we can fetch the single video data from the YouTube Data API. Hello, welcome to ResoCoder. Right off the bat, let's get started inside YouTube data source, because this is where we first have to add new code so that we can then use those functions which we are going to add in this part inside the YouTube repository, because remember that our chain of calls kind of is from the BLoC to the repository. So BLoC calls repository and repository in turn calls YouTube data source. Repository is like a middle layer which facilitates simpler pagination of data and all of such things. So first, for that reason, let's go to YouTube data source and we want to add a new function which will be called fetch video info. It's going to return a future, but this future will return YouTube video response instead of YouTube search result. So YouTube video response. Now let's import that. We cannot yet do that because we need to finish the definition of function. So fetch video info, and it's going to accept one optional named parameter string called ID, and it's also going to be an async function. And now we can finally hit Control and dot on this YouTube video response and import. We are going to import the whole model detail.dart here. And now inside this function, we need to somehow get hold of the URL which we need to call in order to use the API, right? Just like we are using search base URL inside search videos, and that search base URL looks like this. We also need to use a video base URL inside fetch video info. That URL, that video base URL, which I am now going to paste here, is available from the link in the video description, which is gonna take you to resocoder.com. So just go over there and paste it in here. So we're going to be left with something like this video base URL, which is Google API/YouTube v3 videos, then question mark part is snippet, and we also need to specify the key, which is API key, which is in its own separate file, so that we do not put it inside version control, as I have explained previously when we were building this search base URL. You don't want to put your API keys mostly into Git or some other version control system. Now we are going to use this video base URL inside the fetch video info, but we cannot just use it as it is because we need to add some data to it, precisely this video ID which is passed into the fetch video info function. So we are going to have final URL which will be equal to video base URL, and to it we want to concatenate the aforementioned ID. We need to concatenate it in a format that we add an ampersand here, so this and symbol, and ID is equal to interpolated ID. So we just added some stuff on top of that URL, video base URL, and now we want to get a response from HTTP client. So final response is equal to await, because response are asynchronous. So client, which is the HTTP client dot get, and we want to get whatever is inside that URL. So we want to call this URL on the client. And now, as soon as we have this response, so as soon as await is finished, we want to check that if response dot status code is 200, which means that it's okay, no problems were encountered. And also, by the way, you can see that this equals sign is somehow different from how it looked like in previous videos. That's because I'm also using a different font, which you could have noticed. That font is called Fira code. Actually, I can show you the settings. So here font family is Fira code, and I have also enabled font ligatures. So font ligatures, and Fira code has font ligatures, and what that means is that whenever I write equals equals, it changes into a nice like 2 lines and not just 2 equals besides each other. And also if I write, I don't know, for example, this thing here, so when I have just an expression body method, right, it changes into a nice sign, or for example, greater equal changes to this, and so on. So that's Fira code font, if you are not aware of it. And now let's get back to the actual coding. So if status code is 200, so if everything goes okay, we want to return YouTube video response, right? And we want to get it from JSON, because this response has the JSON response, and we want to transform that JSON into something manageable in Dart, which is YouTube video response. And the JSON is located under response.body, just like inside this search videos function here, also response.body. And we also want to have an else statement, which will say that if something goes wrong, we want to throw YouTube search error. And inside it, we want to pass in the error message, which is located under the responses body error and message. And we can actually copy this part of code from the previous function for searching videos. So just copy this, and the error message is located under the same location inside the JSON map. Now actually, let's move on to YouTube data source test, and we would do that prior to writing this fetch video info function. But because we are in a tutorial, I'm just writing code which I have on a different screen. So I'm now really like producing the code as I am speaking. And that's why I can afford to write tests only after I have created the actual production function in the real class. But if you are writing apps yourself and not in a tutorial, you would write tests first, and then only by the functionality of those tests, you would actually implement the function in the production code. So now let's move on to YouTube data source test. And we are going to add a new test group, because we have already one test group for searching videos here. And we want to add another one, which will be for fetching videos. So yeah, fetch video group. We can already import YouTube video response, and actually we are going to import whole model detail. So what does this fetch video group actually test? Well, it tests whatever we have already implemented in YouTube data source. And also, if you want to get this test code to check it out by yourself, you can get it from the link in the video description, which is gonna take you to resocoder.com. So we want to test that fetch video function. Whenever it is called, it returns YouTube video response when the call completes successfully. And we have surely implemented that. Then we also have that it throws YouTube video error on a bad request, and we have also surely implemented that too. And then it makes HTTP requests to proper URLs. So basically we are just testing if it changes the ID, and it should, because we are adding the ID here on top of the video base URL. We are concatenating it, so that test should pass too. And that's it, because that function is pretty simple. So it just has 3 tests. So now we can run those tests, and the YouTube data source test does not pass because it cannot open file video response.json. That's because I have actually forgotten to add that file, and that fixture, so-called fixture file, is just a response which should be returned from the actual API, because inside testing we are actually mocking the real API so that it always returns the same data. And that fixture is specified here. It's called video response, and it should be present under data fixtures here, but we don't have any such fixture. So let's change it. Let's add a fixture like this over to the project. So I've just copied two fixtures here. First is video response.json. It's just whatever is returned from the API call. Just paste that URL which you have over in here in YouTube data source. Just paste that into Google Chrome or some other browser, and whatever JSON is returned, you want to paste it inside a JSON file under fixtures. And also you can get the code from the link in the video description as always. And then we also have video response empty fixture, which gets returned from the API when there are no videos with such an ID as we called on that API. So now this test should pass just fine. So let's run it once more. And actually, by testing, we have just discovered an error which was created in the previous part of this tutorial series, which is that we have a problem with the serializing build values. It says here that we do not have a builder factory for build list video item, and we can fix this problem by adding one. Oh wow, and after a bit of searching on Google, on Stack Overflow precisely, I have found out why this problem is occurring. So what this problem is that it is caused by a bug inside build value library, so it seems. So basically, build value library generator does not properly generate this serializers.g.dart file. So that's the reason why we do not have the builder factory for some kind of a video item build list. And actually we can see that we surely do not have the factory here generated, because the test complains, if I can find it, the test complains that we did not call this serializers builder.add builder factory for build list video item. And surely inside serializers.g.dart, this add builder factory is called for search items, it's called for strings, but it's not called for video items here. So this file was wrongly generated for some reason. For that, we can just hope that it gets generated for the second time properly, and if not, we are going to modify it by hand, because like what else can we do? So I'm actually going to, just to be safe, copy the contents of the current serializers.g.dart file. Now let's delete this file, so move to recycle bin. Now serializers.dart throws an error because, yeah, it's missing its second part, the generated part. Now let's go over to the console and let's write Flutter packages pub build runner or pub run build runner. And now let's just say build one-off build. And after some time it will generate the g.dart file for serializers. Alright, so the build succeeded after 11.2 seconds. Let's check out serializers.g.dart. So we can see if it has added the builder factory, and yes, it has added that builder factory. Now these tests should pass properly. So let's run them, and fetch video should be all green check marks. And will it be so? No, it's not gonna be so, because this throws an YouTube video error, still thinks that it should not throw an error, while in fact it should in fact throw an error. It expected that it throws instance of YouTube video search error, and it actually threw instance of YouTube search error. What? Oh, that's the problem. We are throwing the wrong error here. Oh my goodness. So let's actually go, my apologies again, let's actually go over to the YouTube data source somewhere here, and let's actually change this class to be the proper class which should be thrown. Actually, it doesn't matter because both of those classes have the same structure. They both just have one field called the message, and they are not build values, so Basically, they are the same, just we have different naming for them so that we can differentiate between search errors and video errors. But now we want to return YouTube video error. And now that test should actually pass. So we've had a bunch of errors. One of them was mine fault and the other one was build values fault. So yeah, that just happens. Now let's add the tests for YouTube repository. But first let's close all of these unnecessary files which I have opened. So we want to go over to YouTube repository test, and we are going to add another group which will be detail, and we can go over this detail group and first import all of the proper classes which are needed. And also let's import, we cannot import this yet because we are actually going to create it. So let's go over this detail group. So whenever we call fetch video info function on the YouTube repository, it should return a video item, which is kind of sensible. Then it should also throw a no video exception when it is called with a non-existent ID. That's because we wanna let the user know that video with such an ID does not exist, and display a nice image with the message together. This centered message, we are going to display that centered message here. For that reason, we need to throw an exception when there are no videos with such an ID. Now let's go and implement YouTube repository. We want to add a new function returning a future, which will contain video item, and it will be called fetch video info. And it's going to again accept a string ID, and it's going to be async again. What have I just done? It doesn't matter. So async, and inside it, we wanna get final video response, and it's going to be equal to await, and we wanna await the result of the function which we have just created inside YouTube data source, because remember the chaining of calls. BLoC, repository, data source, HTTP client, and the HTTP client just does something lower level, and it calls the API. So await YouTube data source, and actually it would help if we actually were creating this function inside the class and not outside the class, because now we can actually access YouTube data source. And on it, we want to call fetch video info and pass in the ID here. Now let's also import video item class. So the whole model detail here. And if video response dot items are empty, so is empty, we want to throw a new exception. No such video exception. So we want to create a new class all the way down, class, no such video exception. It's going to implement exception, and it's going to have just one final message, which will be a constant message, which will always say no such video. So we want to throw this no such video exception from this fetch video info class. And if they are not empty, so if there is one result, we want to return that result. So it's located under video response items and the first, so the 0th item. Now let's go to repository test, and let's actually we don't need to do anything because we don't need to import new files, because the code that we have just added is all under repository, and we are already importing the repository file into YouTube repository test.dart. So now we can run even this test, and it's going to pass. And surely it does pass. So we have just successfully implemented the YouTube data source and also YouTube repository with some minor hiccups, because nothing is perfect, not even the build value library. And not even me, not even ResoCore is perfect when he puts the wrong class in the wrong place. And that's actually the reason why we need to write tests, because otherwise we would only find out when we were debugging the actual UI, or even worse, we would find out only in production once the app is released that it does not work. So it would kind of be pretty bad, as you can imagine. But when you have tests, you are going to catch these kind of stupid and also a little bit less stupid errors, and those tests are going to save you a lot of headaches. And that's it for this video. If you don't want to miss more tutorials like this, subscribe to this channel and also hit the bell button so that you join the notification squad and be first to get to see the new videos which I upload. If this tutorial helps you with implementing the YouTube data source and also YouTube repository and also all of the tests and fixing the bugs which occurred, definitely give it a like and also share it with others. Leave a comment if you have anything to say. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, and see you in the next video.